I can't help but wonder, and this is a kind of a broad question. Do you think psychedelics one day will have the capabilities of curing a disease like Alzheimer's and dementia? Hey everyone, welcome to our latest Traded Black podcast. As usual, I am your host, Shad Dales. We talk psychedelics today. There's been some pretty big announcements pertaining to the industry over the past week and a half, and we want to dive into what these announcements mean. And there's no other better person that we want to talk with as we welcome him back to our podcast. He's a psychedelic advocate, filmmaker, and entrepreneur. Good to see Zappy Zapolin, who looks like he's in the sun once again. Good day. How are you?
Yes, coming to you from LA. Great to be back, Shad. What an incredible week of highs and lows we're having here in the industry.
Yeah, it's well, I've last time we spoke with you, and then some of the guests that I've had on recently, we've talked about how research continues to be at the forefront. There's been some strong data that's come out from companies like Small Pharma, yet the investment community, I don't think, really understands where it is right now. We could see some, like, look at Australia with what they announced, back last month, and the stuff that we're, forecasting, which could come down with maybe Health Canada and the FDA over the next, 9 to 12 months. But yet on the capital market side, people are still not totally, I guess, bought into the idea. What do you think needs to happen to get to the turning point where we see a resurgence with some of the share prices with these companies?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it's just, this is such a cutting edge category that when you're in a category like that, it's sometimes you're a little too early. Some of these companies, they just came too early. Some might have gone off after the wrong market segment. In a couple cases, I know we're going to talk ketamine there. But, just it's such a moment here where, the positive news, things that MAPS is coming out with, their new studies, Small Pharma, the opportunity with Australia to be able to do work there, to have Prince Harry come out and say that psychedelics are a part of his mental health regimen. These are just like things that never could have been said before. The other night I was watching the Academy Awards and there was a joke. Jimmy Kimmel made a joke about psychedelics in the show. So you're seeing it mainstreaming, but I think the investors are going to be kind of the last to catch up here because in their mind, they think that this is sort of amazing, but in the future. So they're discounting it all the way back to the fact that it's federally illegal and all that stuff. Australia alone, I mean, this is so huge. My company, Psychoceutical, we're doing a clinical trial in Australia because these terms that the government are giving are so favorable. They want you there. They're going to give you over 40% of your spend on your clinical trials and things. Huge. They're giving back to you in a rebate.
Every dollar you spend, they're giving you 40 cents back.
Yep. And the data that's going back and forth between the Australian equivalent of the FDA and the US FDA, there's a reciprocal relationship. You can use data that's done in Australia here for your, for clinicals. So why wouldn't you do it there is kind of the thing. It's kind of like these states like, Florida or Texas or Nevada, Delaware, these places that are very business friendly and maybe have different incentives for businesses. And so I think for the psychedelic industry, everybody should be taking advantage of it like Psychoceutical's doing because, in the case of Psychoceutical, we're doing a trial where, we've already done some clinical work. We just announced, I don't know if you saw, Shad, but we came out with some press this week about the fact that we're in a situation where we put clinical data out that 100 patients used our NeuroDirect ketamine, where you rub it at the back of the neck at the base of the hairline. It goes into the nerves to the brain. It avoids the whole system. And so you don't have a psychedelic effect. You don't have any dizziness or nausea, but you get this benefit of the calmness that you really want and the neurogenesis. So it's like our clinical data said it was 80% effective. So we're rushing ourselves down there to Australia to put a trial together that has been, done now formally, because you can't wait around for these different municipalities, states, governments to, get with the program like we are right now. So you just have to be kind of creative in the industry as an entrepreneur.
Looks like I got to get down to Australia and experience what's going on down there, because to your point, when we look at different municipalities, states, countries, that sort of thing that are moving slowly, you talked about some companies getting in maybe a little too early, and I wanted to bring up the news about Field Trip Health. You probably saw late last month, the company announced that they formed an independent committee to explore strategic options, in part because of the difficulty raising capital in these current environments, needless to say the least. And now this week they announced the closing of 5 clinic locations in Seattle, Chicago, Washington, D.C., San Diego, and Fredericton, New Brunswick, Canada. So Zappy, needless to say, it appears the independent committee is laying their fingerprints down on what could be the last months of this company, which seems crazy to think. This is a company that raised close to $80 million at one time. If you look at it from a macro level, where do you think things went wrong for this company? Is it just the idea of it came in too soon?
Yeah, I think, they were one of the first movers. So of course it's going to cost you more when you're in that position. But I think they kind of maybe went after the wrong market. You think about Field Trip is kind of like tripping, Mind Bloom, another one. It's kind of like bloom your mind. But I think right now, post pandemic, in a crisis of mental health and addiction, all people want is relief of PTSD, anxiety, and addiction.
Yeah.
So they don't want to trip and bloom their mind. They want, straight up medical. They almost don't care, Shad, what the compound is. They're not that interested. They just want this anxiety to go away. And I think that, some of the companies that are more focused in the medical, in ketamine, they're going to thrive in a way that maybe Field Trip and Mind Bloom didn't, because they went for this kind of psychedelic experience, fuzzy, warm, all that.
Yeah.
And that's not what people want post pandemic. They
No.
want, I want to take something and get rid of this anxiety or this addiction.
One of the things that we've talked about in previous podcasts with a couple other guests is the fact that companies have got to get to their phase 2 data to get sponsored by Big Pharma come phase 3, which I think is going to start happening. When I look at some companies that are involved in drug development plus the clinical model, does Big Pharma frown upon that? Is it like one or the other that they like to invest in, or not, I shouldn't say invest in, but at least look into sponsor? Because I know you have conversations with a lot of political leaders and big pharma companies, but maybe elaborate a little bit on that as to like what you hear and what they look for.
Yeah, it changes with the time, so I think some of these companies like Field Trip, they started to try to do both. Then they got excited about the clinic model, and then they tried to, they shifted, and then, they wound up, having to basically break out the bioscience from the clinic because they weren't getting any value for it from the investors. It was just sort of a ho-hum, who cares, throw it in for nothing. And so I think a lot of these companies, you have to be really, there's examples like, companies like, where they've had to, split themselves into these different divisions. Like IAC, the internet company, they own Match.com and, this.com and that, and great companies making a lot of money, but Wall Street would never give them any benefit because, these things they just didn't understand something, so they gave it a zero value or a negative value.
Pathway to revenue. You got to explain it simplistically, right?
Yeah, exactly. And, I think again, not to be too heavy in talking about psychoceutical, but I feel like, these companies, most of them are years away with their psychedelic compounds. Even, great companies like Atai Life Sciences and Compass and these guys, they're still a ways off. And so, for us, the reason we're doing the Australia route, we're trying to just be as flexible as we can because we've got this topical delivery. And, I had Rick Doblin, founder of MAPS. He was in Sarasota. He came to the psychoceutical lab in Sarasota and, met with us and talked about our topical ketamine. And he was blown away because he was like, I've been in this 50 years and I didn't really realize that, if you put it here because it's of the nerves in the brain, that you get some different outcome. He's like, these are the kind of things that are right under our noses. And if we can, spend some time, now in a legal sense, being able to do all the right research, then we can come out with why how we should use these in the best way. And so I think we just have to, that's why, I'm pushing so hard for legalization, Shad, is because, once we can do the research and we can figure out, I describe it like a peanut allergy, you have to figure out who has a peanut allergy so they're not affected.
Yeah.
You don't just say no peanuts for anybody because these small, minor percentage have a bad effect with it. We just have to do the research, figure out who it's good and not good for, and then we can really address mental health and addiction, which is what psychedelics are all about.
You have a good relationship with Rick Doblin, and it could be any week now that they, announce the results of their phase 3 clinical trial pertaining to MDMA. And from what I'm hearing, the results are supposed to be very, very strong. This is a company that I've had conversations with where they spent upwards of $300 million of research. And I have to ask, if you're Rick Doblin, and what this would do for the industry, but this is a nonprofit organization. The FDA potentially could approve MDMA within the next 12 months. Would this company not look to go public, knowing that the demand for mental health right now, and in the event, if you were Rick Doblin and you are having those conversations right now, if a company like MAPS were to go public, like what would that do overall for the industry?
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, I think that would be just an incredible watershed event for the industry because,
You do, huh?
Rick is, he's an incredible person. He knows what to do. So he's, just laser focused on getting the data out and getting the approval from the FDA. But I think like when you think about the market opportunity there, and you think about the fact that, his data shows that when people take MDMA for PTSD, like 2/3 of all the people who take the MDMA with the therapy, 2/3 of those people no longer have PTSD. They don't have the
Not
symptoms.
regression,
It's
but
gone.
no longer. Like that's
Exactly.
huge.
So that's huge. And then the data is actually showing that after 2 months they're doing really well, but after a year they're doing even better. And so that really says, wow, this model of psychedelics plus therapy, this is a really powerful model. And if MAPS went public, I think like, even though, I know they've got like a B Corp, which is, for the public benefit. So that means that they can do a lot of things that another, for-profit company couldn't do. It's in their charter that they can, be very, charitable and do things without, their focused eye on, just profit. But you think about, MDMA and the veterans, if they just did the veterans, this is a multi-billion-dollar, company, and the exclusive
so
that
veterans
they have.
alone would turn into a multi-billion-dollar company, you're saying?
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow.
And I don't know that they want to go that direction, but for the industry, I think it would be huge because
Yeah.
we're all waiting for Compass to commercialize the first drug next year. And when that happens, I think the markets are going to go crazy. The investors are going to understand that this is now because that's a psilocybin-based drug. So they're going to say, aha, okay, ketamine's been legal. Now here comes psilocybin, MAPS with MDMA. What's next? Let's get in here because, the regular things they're funding for mental health or addiction, just not working. They're no better than placebo. So
Right.
here you have, Rick at, 66% don't have PTSD. You're talking about Psychoceutical had a ketamine topical with 100 patients, and 80 of them said that they had dramatic benefit from using the topical ketamine for PTSD. So it's like we just have to, really keep doing what we're doing as an industry, you doing what you're doing, all these incredible people bringing awareness to this. And for all the people listening, this is an incredible opportunity. If you can own companies in this space now, I think, after, because I've been in the .com bubble and the real estate bubble and you've seen these things, and there's always real value there. Big brands and big opportunities come out of those times where, it gets hit. And so here we are in this moment, and there's some very real things happening here for psychedelics and the companies involved. I think, definitely the next $1 trillion industry. And if you just own a few good stocks like we're talking about here, you're in a position where, could fund your whole retirement just based on you being this early in this category.
Hey, before I go any further, all views in the Traded Black podcast, the guests on this podcast, are purely opinion. You should not treat any opinions expressed by us or our guests as investment advice. And the views on this podcast are intended to be informational and are not investment advice. I do want to bring something up. We talk about the demand as to like what's going on and the need for this. I was reading in BBC where they recently reported that police forces in Great Britain have seen a significant rise in the number of mental health incidents that have dealt with in the past 5 years. Some 21 forces out of 48 in England, Scotland, and Wales responded to a BBC Freedom of Information request, and every force reported a rise since 2017. That's a real eye-opener. So not only have we seen a lack of capacity in communities in North America pertaining to growing mental health, Zappy, this is happening everywhere. So are you experiencing the same feedback based on the people that you're speaking to globally?
I am, I'm communicating with people from around the world, and everybody right now realizes that, psychedelics for mental health and addiction is the only positive story that we have going that's really a solution to so many other different things. So, yeah, I'm finding that the data is coming out of these very credible places, and you think about London, or UK after the lockdown and everything that happened there, people are hurting, and the economy and the fact that Kim Jong-un's shooting off missiles into the sea. It's like, if you don't have some amount of PTSD, I think something might be wrong with you. But given that everybody's walking around with PTSD, we need these breakthrough compounds. And I just look at these as something that maybe, if people had listened to Rick Doblin, 50 years ago and just, accepted him at his truth about what his intent was, we would already, we'd have suicide rates way down. We'd have overdose rates. That's my goal. That's why I'm doing everything I'm doing, is because I know that this category of compounds, this technology, can actually bring suicide rates down, veteran suicide rates dramatically down, and overdoses dramatically down. So what else is going to do that? Nothing. Cannabis won't do it. Talking to people's not going to do it. But having that direct experience in the psychedelics and building new neural pathways is exactly what people need right now.
Well, you talk about 50 years, talking about sticking to a plan, and that somebody believes in something. Like if I'm sitting down and want to lend money to somebody, they've been working at something for 50 years, I don't think they're going to give up very easily. That's a true testament of what kind of belief Rick Doblin has, right?
Yeah, that is. And I think that's why you and I are sitting here saying, hey, if they ever do go public, I will buy that stock, because, you think about, what he's had to go through. He's had to sue the government, go to the, court, all these things. And, and to just stick with that, he's a really inspirational figure for everybody in this industry, because,
Sure.
The days that you want to quit, or you hear some bad news, or somebody does something stupid, you're just like, well, you know what? We got to keep going, just like Rick Doblin did. And that's what's going to get us out of this mental health addiction challenge we've got.
Yeah, and the encouraging thing is you're starting to see a pivot, because he's appearing on networks like CNBC and Fox Business News. So clearly they're seeing, some real data and progress and momentum that's building. And, I'd be anxious to see, or curious to see, how they view in the conversations they'll have with Rick 2 years from now. I think that's something that is going to be, I think, rightfully earned by Rick Doblin. And I can't wait for that day for him, if things pivot the right way.
Yeah, I think he'll probably wind up winning a Nobel Prize or something like that, because, when you look back and you think about what PTSD does to veterans and to people with sexual trauma, it's like the rest of your life is just not livable. And so for somebody to fight as hard as he did to get this, MDMA plus therapy protocol where, it's just perfect, it's exactly what you need. For me, that feels like, the kind of thing you win a Nobel Prize. You see, suicide rates go down by, 30%, addiction overdoses go down by, 50% with some of these drugs that we have in the psychedelic space that are going to come out. That's what you win a Nobel Prize for, and I hope he does, because that will be major.
Rick Doblin is a good man, that's for sure. I want to pivot now. Last thing I want to touch on. This really caught me by surprise. The Synthesis Institute basically had an implosion that took place last week where they announced bankruptcy, and it left over 200 students in limbo. So the organization, which included a Dutch retreat business and psychedelic facilitator, they plan to develop a 124-acre property in the state of Oregon, and now it's all for naught. And this coming after the state of Oregon approved Measure 109 back at the midterms in November of 2022, which decriminalized all drugs within the state. However, there's more to the story. Many counties and cities prior to the midterm elections, they put what's called potential psilocybin opt-outs to voters ahead of the election. Therefore, the county in which the 124-acre property that Synthesis Institute was planning to develop, which is in Jackson County, decided to put a ban on psilocybin services. So Zappy, when I look at this company that was founded in the Netherlands back in 2018, became a high-quality psychedelic retreat, they collaborated with respected institutions like the Imperial College of London. This looked on paper as a great opportunity for them, especially in a budding state that licensed psilocybin. Like, what happened here?
Yeah, I think this may just be one of these early movers getting caught in their own financial, situation, because as you said, maybe they picked the wrong location because they were trying to be cutting edge. From a financial standpoint right now, certain things are not getting funded in the space, and people really want, tangible. They want it to be something super unique. And I think just maybe, they, just like early in the dot-com time or early in cannabis, some great companies with great intent, they just, leverage too far into one thing. It's like Silicon Valley Bank. They made too many bets on crypto, and they didn't have the right oversight, and now they're gone. I mean, it's not that those weren't smart people and, a great 10-year plan, but somehow, I don't know, greed or desire or something like that, just, force them to take an opportunity with too much risk. And maybe that's what's happened with Synthesis, because obviously, psilocybin microdosing, retreats are going to be, huge. So all the categories that they're playing in are legitimate categories. I think they may have been too early, staked a claim, like you said, on a very specific type of property in a certain place. And that's just not a strategy.
Well, it makes you wonder if their team understood a lot of these opt-outs that were taking place prior to the election, because if they knew, that's still a big risk. And if they didn't, then clearly that's a big miss, right?
Yeah, it's a big miss. It's like Silicon Valley Bank. They never thought that there'd be, inflation rates going through the roof. So to them on paper, they just thought they had this money machine. And I think those guys probably said, well, we have this opportunity, it's too good to let it pass. So let's just cross our fingers and hope that this isn't in the opt-out area. And, that's business. That's like, the stock market, and capitalism, you gotta, the risk equals the returns, and they took some big risks and they got caught. But, I don't think they're any kind of a canary in the coal mine for the psychedelic industry. I think these are individual corporations with different situations. But as I'm seeing it, when people hear the phase 3 data out of MAPS alone, they're going to rush the gates to get in here. But when you think about the fact, they've got neurodirect ketamine, we've got, people talking about, different opportunities with things like DMT and others that are not even really being talked about. This is, it's an exciting space, and it's not going anywhere. Probably, I'm going to guess 10 years from now, your elderly parents will be taking psychedelics. Our grandparents will be. They won't necessarily call it a psychedelic. It's just going to be like part of their daily protocol where they take their stuff. And I know, Chad, you had that thing with your dad recently.
Yeah.
And I wanted to say, I look forward to a day where every family goes to a sort of end-of-life center where the person can have this incredible psychedelic experience, clean up all the things that they want to clean up in their life with their family, and that the family can know, wow, this person's ready for the next transition. And so all these things are happening. We just have to, we're so early that we have to be a little bit patient right now.
Yeah, well, I appreciate the support. And for viewers watching, this company wouldn't exist without my dad launching his own company. And Sadly, my father passed away last week of dementia, but I appreciate you reaching out, and I applaud everybody working in this industry. And I know that we look at PTSD, we look at depression, we look at anxiety and addiction pertaining to psychedelics. I can't help wonder, does and this is a kind of a broad question. Do you think psychedelics one day will have the capabilities of curing a disease like Alzheimer's and dementia?
Oh, definitely. I mean, there's already very strong anecdotal evidence that things like ibogaine, which is an African root that can break a heroin addiction, that in a microdose form could reverse Parkinson's disease, dementia, these kind of things. And so I absolutely think so. I think, end of life is a really important thing that we all have to come together. In my first film, The Reality of Truth, I have Dr. Drew in the film, and he says he thinks, and this came out in 2016, he said, I think the first indication for psychedelics is going to be end of life. He's like, because we need so much help with that if just that can be accomplished with psychedelics, that'd be an incredible first step. But to your point, absolutely, Alzheimer's, dementia, Parkinson's, these are, neurological diseases. And if we have ways to enhance the neural plasticity, to create new neural pathways, I'm sure when we're older in our families and things, we're going to benefit from those things. So it's exciting times.
On average, 99.6% of research trials pertaining to Alzheimer's currently fail. 99.6%. That was a staggering stat that we learned. But the great thing, though, is from what I'm hearing, especially being around doctors a lot lately, there's just so much dedication and research that's being dedicated towards illnesses like this that weren't taking place for quite some time, which leaves, I think, many feeling optimistic because, if we've been trying hard for a long time, it's one thing, but to not try and now put a great effort towards helping people in the current state that they're in, I think only builds momentum for this industry, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And you going through that personal thing with your dad passing, you can imagine how powerful it would be for him to have an experience that could, frame his life in a really positive way. And then you as the family get to go forward in a very positive way, not to have the same kind of PTSD that you usually have around loss. This is the promise. And, the silver lining on the pandemic is that people are ready to, address their mental health and their addiction like never before. And sadly, there's a lot of people presenting with mental health challenges that didn't present prior to the pandemic, but that's where we are. We have to address it. I'm hoping that the federal government will make some bold moves right now. Democrat, Republican, doesn't matter. Bold moves to bring this research forward faster because we all have families, we all have people passing away, we all have people around us facing addiction, and we need help. And these psychedelics are the answer. So if we can get to the research really quickly and, and everybody do a Rick Doblin on their individual compound and their methodology, we're going to have a really dynamic mental health situation going on in the future.
So when it comes to research, when we look at, history, decades past, true or false, psychedelics research today is equivalent to what Big Pharma was back in the 1920s?
Absolutely. Psychedelics today are the equivalent of pharma companies in the 1920s or the biotech companies in the 1990s. It's so breakthrough what's happening that if you can own some of these high quality ones, and right now most of the ones that are left are the high quality companies because the other ones got shaken out with the bubble. And so here we are, you think about companies like Atai, MAPS, potentially Compass Pathways, Psychoceutical. These are companies that are doing things that are so breakthrough and they affect every single family in the world that the quicker we can get to this, the market opportunity is like the pharma from the 20s or biotech in the 90s.
Good chatting with you. Always great catching up with you. I saw a couple
too.
cars go by, so be safe in that LA traffic.
Yes, will do. I will try not to do too many things in one day so I'm not affected.
And when you're out there, find me a pair of sunglasses like those, brother. I need a pair of those.
Aha.
Are you
I will.
are you in Miami next month for Benzenga?
Yeah, I'm going to be there at Benzinga. I'm looking forward. I believe I'm going to be doing a fireside chat with a major celebrity on the at the end of the Psychedelic Day. So I'm looking
Nice.
forward to that.
Okay. Well, hopefully we'll catch up and we'll get some more conversations going. But in the meantime, keep in touch and we'll see you next month.
You too. Peace.
Thanks. Hey everyone, thanks for watching. And if you want to learn more about the emerging industries that we cover, then leave a comment below and let us know who you want us to interview, the questions you want asked, and the information that you want to learn. We want to hear from you. As usual, click on that bell for all notifications to get the latest information. Share this video with your network, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel because we would not be here without you. Thanks for watching, everyone.